Hello everyone and welcome to A Slice of My Life. I received the GiantMouse Knives ACE Clyde and Nazca at the same time a little more than a month ago, so it's high time for a review, and in this video I will be talking about the Nazca. I'm also reviewing the Clyde in a separate video, so I hope you'll check that out as well. The link to my Clyde review will be in the description and on screen at the end of this video, along with my video covering the unboxing and first impressions. Of course, before we kick off, I would like to thank GiantMouse Knives for sending this over, and special thanks goes out to Jack Farmboy for making this happen. The version I have here features natural micarta scales and an M390 blade steel. More specs of the Nazca will be listed on screen as I start the review by talking about the aesthetics of the knife. This here is the brainchild of two knife design legends, Jens Anso and Jesper Voxnaes, and the best way I can describe the overall design of the Nazca is that it is both angular and curvy at the same time. In order to articulate myself better, let's take a closer look at the scales. Starting from the bolster area, the angular lines here feature a gentle convex curve that changes into a concave for the first half of the spine, then into a convex for the second half. Going around the butt, the back spacer peeks out ever so slightly and works harmoniously with the scales and creates a smooth, seamless flow to the lanyard slot. Things get even more interesting here at the grip area, and I'll just let the geometry speak for itself. The area is designed so well that it can be so easily overlooked because when you just take a glance at it, the grooves all make sense, but they start getting mind-boggling when you take a closer look. They're curved and rounded in various ways. The scales also feature extra contouring around the thumb stud and are angled in a way that helps guide your thumb when you have the knife in hand. Also, the Nazca features a dual lug thumb stud, and being an ambidextrous folder, the extra contouring is present on both sides of the knife. In its closed form, the angle of the blade flows very well with the scales and really makes it more of an extension of the overall design of the Nazca. The spine is also chamfered all around, including the jimping, so it's not going to bite your hand or your pocket. The Nazca features a clip point blade with a flat grind, an elongated tip, a swedge, and a subtle concave up top along the spine. The plunge of the blade is angled to match the bolster and leads into an area that I consider to be a sharpening choil. The blade on this natural micarta scales version features a stone-washed finish, but other versions feature a satin finish, so you have options. However, I am a fan of stone-washed finishes, so this is perfect for me. The left side of the blade does not feature any markings, so you can enjoy the geometry in all its glory, and the right side features the GiantMouse and ACE logos as well as the blade steel, etched just diagonally below the thumb stud. Now, the best way I can describe how the Nazca feels in hand when handling it is that I feel at home with it. The silhouette of the scales feel really nice as I wrap my fingers around it, and the contoured micarta scales add a good amount of real estate that fills your hand. To me, the sharpening choil is large enough for me to use as a forward finger choil, although that is not its intended use. I have to make sure I pull tight against the bolster or I might risk cutting my finger. If you have larger hands than I do, don't try it. Also, with the blade deployed, the jimping is located at the perfect position for your thumb. Moving on to the locking mechanism, and that is a crossbar lock, which is probably better known as the axis lock. The operation of the crossbar lock here in the Nazca is smooth and effortless, and it provides a strong lockup, albeit a little more resistant than I like. But what stands out to me is the application and execution of the mechanism in this knife. I've handled my fair share of knives using this locking mechanism, but this here is by far the best I've experienced. In most applications, the actuation of the crossbar lock can be a little gritty, and in some cases you'll have to actuate it from both sides at the same time, but that is not the case here. Also, I've not experienced a build where the geometry of the blade and crossbar lock interface so well. The crossbar lock sorta catches the blade and helps pull it into the closed position, taking the overall action of the knife up a notch. Closing the blade is easy because the crossbar lock is really a joy to work with, and blade centering is also very good here. About the detent, I actually don't have much to say about it besides that it feels just like a crossbar lock. The maker's mark is located on the inner liner. It reads Vox and Anso on each side of the GiantMouse logo. In terms of pocket carry, the Nazca will sit comfortably in your pocket, but because the wired pocket clip isn't a deep carry clip, you'll have a bit of the Nazca peeking out. Weighing in at 4 ounces, it isn't anything too heavy, but you'll definitely still feel it in your pocket. But hey, at the end of the day, it isn't going to weigh down too much. Before we move on to the pros and cons of the Nazca, I'd like to ask you for a moment to please like this video and consider subscribing if you're not already subbed. That would really help the channel out. Okay, time for the pros and cons, and I'll start with what I like about the Nazca. The thing that stands out to me the most is the application and execution of the crossbar lock. It is, in my opinion, the best crossbar lock I've experienced, especially the way it interfaces with the blade during the initial point of actuation. I also love the way it catches the blade and helps to pull it back into the closed position. The next thing I really like about the Nazca is that it is a fully ambidextrous knife, including the reversible pocket clip. And of course, as someone who loves little details, the design of this knife is absolutely stunning. Now, onto the cons. Honestly, it's really hard to find negative points about the Nazca, but I'm really trying my best here. Some of these are borderline petty, so you have been warned. The first is that I personally wish it featured a deep carry pocket clip. Next, I wish that the contour of the scales around the thumb stud area was a little wider. While the angle of the contour does help to lead your thumb toward the thumb stud, I found that I would actually be running my thumb along the edge of the contour instead of comfortably in the curvature of the contour. Also, because of how tight the space between the thumb stud and scales are, I sometimes get my thumb pinched in the notch. The last thing I'd like to mention is the pseudo finger choil. I know the straight line is what interfaces with the crossbar lock, but it looks a little out of place when compared to the entire silhouette of the knife, and I sorta wish that it was curved in some way. And that's all of the petty negative points I have for the Nazca. Okay, to wrap things up, this version of the GiantMouse ACE Nazca retails for $225 US. Honestly, I feel that it's at a slightly higher price point than I expected, but once you consider the workmanship and materials used, you'll start to realize that $225 is a pretty fair price point. There are many other knives out there in the same size and materials range that are priced above $250 US, so keep that in mind. The bottom line is that if you're looking for an ambidextrous knife with a well-executed crossbar lock, then design preferences aside, the Nazca is definitely a knife that you should consider. And that is it, everyone. Thank you so much for sharing in this slice of my life. If you enjoyed this video, please clicky the likey. Please also consider subscribing and ringing the bell. Again, another shout out and thank you to GiantMouse Knives for sending this over. Make sure to hop on over to my other video where I talk about the GiantMouse Knives ACE Clyde. And I will catch all of you in my next slice. Bye!